Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Fall Start Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Edgecombe, joined by my super special, amazing co-host, Josh Whopper Newshafer. How you doing, Whopper?
Oh, not too bad. Enjoying the week off. Don't have to deal with kids giving me a headache for at least the rest of this week and a few other days, so I'm enjoying it right now.
A whole break from Skibbity Toilet. How does that feel?
Oh, God. I hate that phrase so much.
Well, I'll try to avoid bringing it up too much then on the podcast. But today we have a special episode where we're going to be talking about the Fidel Fantasy League. We do have it. It's coming a little close towards the end. Playoffs are all but set. There is still a chance that you or I could miss out on the playoffs, but it would take quite the miracle run from Preston. The 1380 points scored really is a big problem there. And Billy, while technically not out, 5-7, there's a miracle way. It's all but secured if this matchup goes the way that we expect. Currently up 40 points in this matchup, and yeah, not looking good for Preston.
Nope, definitely not right now.
So we'll be talking about the playoffs, our predictions, and going through each of the teams as well as last second who we think will finish last in the toilet bowl. So let's go ahead and start with our undefeated 12-0 team, Kyler, Riley Reed option, having a great season. What immediately stands out to you?
It's just one of those, it's like, how? At the beginning of the year, if you had told me his team would be this good, you'd be like, okay, I think he's going to be decent, but not this good. Lamar Jackson, great pickup, having a great year. Josh Jacobs, he did a lot better than I thought he was going to this year. And, he only had 21 points last night. So, decent game. Tyreek Hill's finally back on track, kind of. Not quite the numbers you'd expect, but that's helping quite a bit as well. And then, he has two commanders. No one thought the commanders would be as good as they are on offense this year. So I think that's been one of the keys to his success is a lot of people didn't think the commanders were going to be nearly as good as they were. And he has, I'd say, probably the two best outside of Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really shocking because Tyreek Hill and Marvin Harrison Jr. were definitely his first two picks, and they've been pretty bad, pretty much the entire season. Like
Yep.
they've definitely had some startable weeks, but for the most part have been pretty abysmal for where they were picked. And yet his team is just dominating, 12-0.
Yep.
Like we said, Josh Jacobs has been a good pick, especially since I want to say week 3. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
after week 3, he's really started to pick it up. A lot of RB1 performances in there. Brian Robinson Jr. looking like a better B. Robinson than Bijan Robinson at times.
Yep.
But really, the MVP, and I think Kyler would say this himself, is George Kittle. The tight end one, absolutely. Just dominating every single time he's on the field, even putting up 20.2 points last week with the backup quarterback.
Nah, that's just one of those. He kind of got lucky this year with all the injuries happening around San Francisco and everything. San Francisco was one of those teams at the beginning of the year. It's like, yes, you have Debo, you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Kittle, you have Ayuk. You need injuries for one of them to become super relevant. And yeah, Kyler's definitely gotten lucky on that one.
Yeah, looking at his bench, we see Adam Thielen, Marvin Harrison, James Conner. Those guys I'd say are pretty much set, but Will Levis and Will Lutz. Any thoughts on those two bench players right now?
And Will Levis is basically Jameis Winston, just more memes instead of actual 30 for 30. I do like the memes, so I've got to admit, those are good memes. Will Lutz, it's a backup kicker for when Aubrey's on his bye week or if something happens to him, so I got nothing on that one. Having a backup kicker, sure, why not?
All right, let's
When
go.
you're already this far ahead of everyone else, why not?
Yeah, and I think it says a lot. 1,700 points for. Like, this isn't some fluke either. He has the most points for in the league, 12-0, though he does have the
Mm-hmm.
least points against, too.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Milo's team. Another great quarterback and a great running back here with Jalen Hurts, Derrick Henry, but then also Jahmyr Gibbs, Flowers,
Mm.
Brown. Little struggle at the tight end position. Goddard's been hit and miss. Same with Tank Dell. Najee Harris in that flex 2 spot. Russell Wilson, Charbonnet, Keenan Allen, Juwan Jennings, Cade Otton on the bench. Immediate thoughts looking at this team.
This one is one of those I look at it, I'm like, I can see that it's good. It surprises me that he's 9-3. Running backs, no issues there. His first two receivers, completely solid, but when you look at some of the other ones, these guys haven't been the greatest all year long. And a lot of times, at least in my experiences, it comes down to who you have in your flex and your tight ends for who can usually win you the week. And they don't jump out to me as nearly as much. I know they've had good years, but definitely just doesn't jump out to me as much as this is screaming number 2 seed right now in the league.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, insane target share. Multiple 10 plus targets per game, yet has 1, 2, 3, 4 games below 10 points. And it's just kind of confusing, that inconsistency from a guy that should be doing really great. And then another player has been really inconsistent has been A.J. Brown, missing weeks 2 through 4, and then kind of being pretty lackluster since he's come back. Has had a couple good games, Rams, Dallas, Cincinnati's okay, Giants okay, but Jaguars not great, Washington's not great, and those are two defenses that are really bad that you would have expected A.J. Brown, your first round pick, to really dominate. But Gibbs, Derrick Henry definitely making up for that difference there.
Yep.
All right, taking a look at the bench, I love seeing Juwan Jennings. Keenan Allen has recently been doing a lot better out of that slot position with the new offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on Russell Wilson and Zach Charbonnet here?
Charbonnet is a decent backup running back to have because, if something happens to Ken Walker, he's at least going to get some workload. He might not be nearly as good, but he's at least going to get something. Russell Wilson, if something happens to Jalen Hurts, I'm not going to say Russell Wilson's a good pick, but it's hard to get much worse than that. He's been doing decent so far this year from what I've been able to follow. So those two don't really have too much issues with. They make sense. Plus, he's a Steelers fan, so might as well have Russell Wilson with, I don't know what it'd be, Steelers country, let's weld.
I love it. Do you think he starts Cade Otton or Dallas Goedert this week?
He should go Cade Otton.
I would think so too. The projected points do favor Goddard though by 0.8, something like that. No, 0.13.
I'm one of those for the most part. I don't base everything off projected points just because that's your averages and each team is different. Cade Otton right now, he's one of those. See, Mike Evans is still out, correct? And
I believe he's back.
He is back finally?
Yes.
Okay. I'd still go on, even though now he's not the number 1. That's still the number 2 for Baker Mayfield, who this year has been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the number 3 team and your opponent this week in fantasy. Once again, we're seeing it. Josh Allen, another top 3 quarterback here. Top 3 teams, I think, have the top 3 quarterbacks in fantasy, and that's pretty amazing for them.
Mm-hmm.
After that, we're seeing some young running backs. A lot of inconsistency in the receiver position, but Amon-Ra locking it down. Rachaad White, and then big Brock Bowers here at the tight end has been fantastic. And a lot of interesting bench players here. And I think, these questionables, I think that Josh Downs is going to be out and Tillman's going to be out, but we're not sure yet. Coleman should be playing. All right, immediate thoughts when you look at this team, seeing that he's the number 3.
Admittedly, my first thought is, man, he has a lot of players that I ended up drafting originally or picking up early in the year because had Pacheco, he was my running back, but he got hurt, so I ended up dropping him because I needed something at the time. And between Cooper Kupp and Isaiah Pacheco, I wasn't even sure if Pacheco would be back in the regular season, so I ended up dropping him instead of Kupp, which I think for the most part that's been a good move by me so far. He has Calvin Ridley, who I dropped because he was sucking for quite some time there, and then all of a sudden now he's kind of back to being good, or at least decent.
Yeah, and one usable week in the first 7 weeks says a lot, and then suddenly has exploded.
Yep, and let's just say I dropped him at the wrong time, unfortunately. And then trade Josh Downs for Travis Kelce, who I think that's been a good trade for me so far. But overall, his team is solid. Quinn Johnson, that's another guy I used to have on my team. Um, Overall, I'd say his team's not the most terrifying to me. Like, it looks like it's easily beatable, but these are guys that just have those games every so often, and he just happens to keep getting them at the same time at the perfect time.
Yeah, I think that's
Josh
really
Allen.
the story of this team is that he has so many boomer bust players, but they're all booming at the same time all together. I think this could be a
Mhm.
scary team going to the playoffs. I think I'd rather play against Milo or Kyler than this team right
Yep.
here, but because Amon Ra, we know he's got huge games in this season already. 38.7 against the Jaguars, Texans, Green Bay, multiple 20-point games. Like, that's a monster
Mhm.
player right there in the receiver. Brock Bowers has been fantastic. In Johnston, we know he's going to catch some of these balls and will make teams pay for dropping him and not believing in him.
Mhm.
Rashad White, of course, and Isaiah Pacheco. He started the season off hot, 15.8, 16.1. If we get into these last 3 weeks or so of the season, Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, he could have a great finish and be a league winner for anyone that was able to pick him up off of waivers or hold on to him the whole time.
Mhm. I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah, definitely a scary team not wanting to play against him, but sometimes the boom is good, sometimes the bust is bad.
Yep.
All right, let's take a look at our fourth place team. We have Jaden with the Dallas Defenders. I promise I'm trying. And I gotta say, of all the playoff teams, this one is the most shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, no hate. Just Joe Burrow has not been, super consistent. We see a couple really good weeks here in the last 3 weeks. Was on bye, but then also 13, 14, 19, 17, 8. A lot of inconsistency there from the quarterbacks. James
Hmm.
Cook has been hit or miss. Garrett Wilson has been really hit or miss, and we're seeing Raheem Mostert's a starter. Jamison Williams, Jalen Tolbert, Hunter Henry. Very confusing team to look at.
Yeah, this is one of those kind of going on with the last one where it's boom or bust. This one is you have 4 or 5 players that have to boom in order to win, and apparently he's been having those all year long. Or about half the year, I guess I should say. He is 7-5.
Yeah, but let's talk about the MVPs though on his team because Joe Mixon, Chuba Hubbard, and Nico Collins have been fantastic when they've been healthy this season. Mixon and Collins, especially the Texans players, just monsters. And nobody is wanting to play up against this. This stretch right here is probably RB1 overall from Joe Mixon. Fantastic there. And then Nico Collins as well. Just lighting it up when healthy.
Mm-hmm. It's terrifying. Those two, especially when they're on and they're doing well. Good luck.
Yeah, it looks like he's got an extra bench spot open right now. What kind of player should he be looking to roster at this point in the league?
Let's see. Looking at what he has, maybe just going for just a pure upside kind of receiver at this point because Jalen Tolbert, he's okay. He's not great. So if you can get one of those kind of receivers, if there is any available right now that are home run hitters, that might not be a bad idea just in case you need that for a week, or maybe look at the tight end position. I'm not actually sure what's available right now.
Yeah, I haven't
Okay,
I haven't
maybe
looked
not.
at the tight end, but to me, instantly Noah Gray pops out as somebody that clearly we
Yep.
know he has multiple touchdown upside, and is having his best season ever. Could be
Hmm.
a guy that he could throw into that bench spot. I think a second tight end would help out this team. Someone who could just explode if like the starter got injured. And Noah Gray's one of those guys.
Exactly.
Yeah. Isaiah Likely would be another one. Um,
Hmm.
so, all right, let's move on to the number 5 team. Whopper, this is your team. How have you felt about this season with your team?
How the hell am I? I don't even know how in the hell am I 7-5? I don't know. Like parts of it, I like. Kyler Murray's been solid for me all year.
Sure.
Trey McBride, Kyler Murray, that's been a fantastic stack for me all year long.
Yeah.
That's why I got those guys during the draft.
Yep.
T. Higgins has been disappointing for the most part because it felt like I've had him for maybe 3 weeks. Is what it feels like.
Yeah. We can see when healthy, clearly an absolute force on the field. 2 20-plus point games. Guy's a monster, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 missed weeks, I think, in here is what I see, or 5 missed weeks.
Yep.
Not great.
That hurt. That hurt a lot. Cup's been solid. Wandale, for the most part, has been solid for me, although this week he kind of laid an egg, so that hurts. Javante's been decent for me. I did trade for Ramondre, which I'd rather not talk about that trade because I was dumb on that one and panicked. So if we can avoid that trade, I'd prefer that.
Yeah, I gotta say, these running backs suck. I mean, Javonte Williams, I think he had negative 2 yards rushing last week, if I remember right. Yeah, negative 2 yards rushing on 8 attempts. Has been able to make some points. We're seeing a decent target share throughout this, and hasn't been terrible in full PPR. And Ramondre has a lot of time been exactly the same. 13 rushing yards, 16, 18, 23, but able to put up a PPR floor with those catches.
And that's why admittedly I did trade for Ramondre. I might as well talk about the trade.
Let's see.
So,
pull it up.
A few weeks ago, I traded for Ramondre. This was a pure panic. And admittedly, I thought CeeDee Lamb was having a worse season than he was, because I just haven't been able to keep up nearly as much as I used to be able to. And panic because Pacheco's coming back. I don't have any good running backs after Kareem Hunt once Pacheco comes back, and I didn't see anything on waivers that's like, that's someone who might actually get me something, so I panicked.
Yeah, last week you traded CeeDee Lamb to pick up Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah,
it was quite a shock to see. The CeeDee Lamb not having that terrible of a season, not the season we expected from the wide receiver one, but definitely been on the down stretch, and last night did not do very well for the Cowboys and his fantasy owners, but Ramondre Stevenson possibly not the running back I'd be targeting, but
it was one of those. I was like, who? Because again, in my mind, CeeDee Lamb has been sucking all year long because you're expecting 20 plus every single game, and he hadn't had that for the most part. So in my mind, he was kind of garbage this year. Because again, I'm not able to pay attention nearly as much as I used to be able to, unfortunately. And Stevenson had been having a pretty good stretch of weeks there, so I was like, okay, this might be someone who's doing good. Drake May's looking like he's halfway decent right now. Might as well target him.
Yeah, overall, this team starting to get healthy. It's going pretty good. I mean, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, both healthy now. Hoping that the running backs can, get a consistent workload. Tyler Lockett not in a starting role. Clearly a bench guy for the culture, helping out the team on the bench. Scout team MVP.
Yep.
MVS there on the bench is another one that cracks me up. You picked up my Anthony Richardson. I dropped him when he got benched and did not get to pick him back up. Think you'll ever be starting him over Kyler?
Only if Kyler gets hurt. At this point, it's more just to keep him away from everyone else. And if something were to happen to Kyler, at least I got the rushing upside with Anthony Richardson.
All right. Should be an interesting team for the playoffs that are coming up. Last playoff team is my team. And I got to say, the story of my team has been fighting tooth and nail this season. Christian McCaffrey was first overall, or was my first pick. Was not first overall, went number 2. Has been out almost the entire season. Absolutely terrible. Brian Thomas Jr. has missed significant time. Malik Nabers has missed time. TJ Hawkinson is my starting tight end, has missed most of the season. Jaden Reed and Bucky Irving have been hit and miss. Achan was terrible with the backup quarterbacks, has been amazing with the starters. Trevor Lawrence I picked up off of waivers. Um, Devonta Smith has been in and out, has been terrible. Chris Olave, my second round pick, has been out most of the season and likely will not be coming back. I've got Taysom Hill on here, Drake May, backup running back Braylon Allen, and the prodigal son and Elijah Moore on this team. I'm looking at my picks. My first round pick missed most of the season. My second round pick has been out for most of the season. My third round pick, Achan, has been amazing. Love that guy. Fourth round pick was, I believe, Anthony Richardson, if not Sam Laporta. Either way, the other one was my fifth round pick. Both of those guys are not on my team. Sixth round pick, Malik Neighbors has been great. I think Thomas was my guy in the seventh. A lot of these guys that I drafted ended up getting injured and not being on my team for very long, but able to put up a team that is right on the edge of playoffs.
I think it's kind of like how I put it at the very beginning of the year, after we had our draft recap. Your team is a glass cannon. You're either going to do 20,000 million points, or they're all going to be injured after week 1.
Yeah, I wish Sleeper would show this, but I have been the most inconsistent team all season. Perhaps I can see it like this. 98 points, 97 points. 116 is a normal amount. 148, 84, 134. It's just real like back and forth of I'm going to put up either 170 points or I'm putting up 80 points.
Yep.
Most of this season. Yep, that is the story of someone who leaked my nudes for sure. And the last team that is on the edge of the playoffs, nobody understands why, has one of the lowest points in the entire league, scored average number of points against, just getting lucky at the right times. What the fuck is Preston doing still in the playoff consideration?
Looking at his team, Gino's okay. I won't say, actually, how is Gino doing it this year? Okay. We'll put him as okay.
14.
DeAndre Swift has been hit or miss. Tony Pollard, I think the last few weeks he's finally starting to hit his stride, but most of the season hasn't been great.
Yeah, last week against Houston was dominant and has had quite a few RB1, RB2 performances, but
Devon Bailey, he must have just picked him up, so I mean that guy's been looking decent. Ladd McConkey's actually been solid for him.
Yeah, he's been great.
Zach Ertz, why not? CeeDee Lamb, I'm glad to see him with only less than 6 points after the trade, so that makes me feel slightly better. Westbrook and Kinney, sure. Jake Moody, Minnesota Vikings, looking at his bench. How the hell is this guy 6-6?
I don't know. It's the most confusing thing ever. It's like, okay, you got Bo Nix, who I wish I hadn't dropped, but has been okay. Madison, Alec Pierce, Christian Watson. Tucker Kraft had a great game, but he's sitting on the bench now for Zach Ertz. It's just the most confusing team I've ever seen.
Yeah, honestly, at this point, I'm surprised he doesn't have Bo Nix ahead Gino.
Could do it, yep. Gino playing against the Jets, Bo Nix against the Browns. Projected points is about the same. We'll see what he ends up doing. Playing against me this week, so
Yep.
Could be interesting. A lot of potential here, we'll say, with Westbrook, Akine, and Vele. Those guys just need 1 or 2 catches to really explode and put up a good week. But yeah. All right, and that is the 7 playoff teams or 6 playoff teams in Preston. Let's talk about Billy's team. This guy started, I believe, 1-5, 1-6, something like that. 1-6, I want to say, and has won 4 straight to give himself a shot at the playoffs. Great team. This should be one of the best teams in the league. Herbert, Walker, Barkley, Nakua, DK Metcalf, Chase Brown has been phenomenal since Zach Moss went out. Addison has been super good here and there. Pitts is having a best season. Mooney's been fantastic. Um, this is like a team that I would be terrified of in the playoffs, especially with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
It's like Preston took all the good luck that Billy should have had and just used it on himself. Like, just took everything that should have been good for his team and used it on himself.
I don't know what blood magic that Preston used here to take away all of Billy's luck, especially in the beginning of the season, but hey, Oklahoma, just the state of Oklahoma fans, OU or OSU, I don't know what kind of blood music they use. Not blood music, blood magic they use down there, but that shit terrifies me. No, his team is fantastic. I had the unfortunate pleasure of going against him last week. Saquon hurt.
Yeah, that guy's a monster.
Yeah, only 46 points last week.
255 rushing yards, 47 receiving yards. Just a monster.
Who would have thought Saquon could be really good if you put him behind a good O-line? Man, that hurt last week, wasn't it, Billy? Because normally I beat him, but that one hurt just because it's 46 points for Saquon.
Yeah.
A guy who, for most of the offseason, I was not all in on.
Yep. Billy, though, will be eliminated from playoffs if I get the win this week. Won't be able to catch me, as will Preston. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the playoff preview. Can look at this bracket here. It's not going to be perfect. This won't be the matchups exactly, but who do you think is winning it if this is the playoff bracket? In 2 weeks.
Okay, so going off the matchups here, you versus Brandon. With how your team's been performing lately, I'm going to take you just slightly. Again, your team is kind of same as him, boom bust. I think your boom is bigger than his boom, though.
Yeah, need Christian McCaffrey to really start being Christian McCaffrey. That would be huge for that. I think I would favor Brandon personally, but should be interesting. Milo getting the bye would be very big for him.
But again, between you and Brandon, it's just who has the bigger booms.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And I think your team's a slightly more consistent, which is why I favor yours just slightly. Because when it comes down to on those boom bust teams, if you have the bust, the team that's more consistent wins.
Yeah, meanwhile, on the other side of the bracket, Kyler getting the bye as the number 1 seed, and then you versus Jaden should be an interesting one. Your projected points is definitely higher, but Jaden has to set his lineup. Not 100% confident he will when he's in the playoffs to, set the best guys that he can there. Right now, I see your 127 projected. It's pretty high. That would definitely be way above league average. So I think you would win this matchup if it was happening, if we knew it right now. But you never know. Jaden's got quite a few guys on that team that are really great.
That's one of those I think it will be a fantastic matchup. I think I got a slight edge, but it also just depends, does he set his lineup?
Yep, exactly. All right, and then to finish it up, who is going to be winning the playoffs?
In the history of our league, every time someone is undefeated and goes into the playoffs, they always lose.
Been there.
I've witnessed that one a few times myself as the loser.
Yep.
So I'm not going to go Kyler. Just because history does tend to repeat itself in our league, no one stayed undefeated the entire time. I'm not going to say myself because, again, I don't feel the best about my team. Milo or your team? I don't know.
Well, I'll just go ahead and jump in then. I would take Milo's team. I think he's pretty much going to secure this bye this week. 9-3 already on the season. Has right behind Kyler in the points for. Um, Milo's got a team that I like. Derrick Henry, Jalen Hurts. We know what these guys do near the end of the year. So it's
Hmm.
I would take Milo's team. I think that he only will need to win 2 games, and that could be huge. But I do think we're sleeping on Kyler a little bit. This is a great team. If we can really see Tyreek Hill continue this dominance, and Jacobs, Kittle, Lamar, Cortland Sutton, and Jacoby Myers have been great these last few weeks, Kyler could have a monster. I think those two are definitely the favorites. And then there's a few dark horses in here. Brandon is definitely one of those dark horses I'd be looking at. Hoping not to play him in the first round.
If I win this week, there's a chance you might not have to.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, looking at the toilet bowl. Who's finishing in last? Call it right now. We didn't really look at these teams, but we can see right now Malachi has all but checked out. Same with Chris. Preston is the third lowest in points scored here. Ethan actually has one of the highest points scored, but we know he's not setting his lineup. So lots of bad things that could be happening here in the toilet bowl. Loser moves on, winner is out. Reverse of the playoffs. Who's finishing last place?
So, looking at teams right now, because I'm looking at Malachi's team first.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Goff, solid. Bijan Robinson, solid. David Montgomery, solid. Michael Pittman, how's he been doing this year?
Not great.
Hey, yikes. Okay. Xavier Worthy, he either hits or he doesn't.
Yep.
Dalton Schultz has been myth. Rashad Bateman, kind of same thing with Xavier Worthy. He either hits or he doesn't. Jake Elliott's a kicker, so sure, why not? And then, no, forgot about Drake London, naturally. That's pretty on brand for me. Who's been pretty good this year. And he didn't start a defense this week, so that's going to hurt his chances just slightly more for trying to get a win. His team's actually not too bad. I think he just doesn't have any luck. He has 2 guys on his team that they either get 20 points or they get 2. I think that's one of his biggest issues. And Pittman's just been awful, apparently, this entire year.
Yeah, like we said with Brandon's team, the inconsistency, except that Malachi's has been really inconsistent in the bad way.
Yeah.
A lot of good guys you would expect to be able to hold it down, but haven't been able to. I'll take a look at Sam's team. This team looks fire to me. Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb should be better. Justin Jefferson's obviously great. Debo's been good. Jonnu Smith's been tight end 1. Fantastic. Shakir will be consistent. This is a good team. I'm not too worried about Sam's team. Ethan starting Zeke is questionable. Devin Singletary as well.
Yeah.
I gotta say Ethan's definitely a front runner for that last place spot there. Chris has got a pretty good team. Obviously, Jane Daniels has been awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone here in the toilet bowl will have good enough teams that there's no clear like, oh my gosh, this team's horrible. But
Yeah.
if I was to be picking a person to win it right now, oh man, this tough. I think I gotta go with Malachi. Sorry, Malachi. It's just a little too inconsistent from the roster here.
I think it comes down to Malachi or Ethan. It just depends as Ethan set up his lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
we'll
the
see if he
determining
watches this.
factor.
We'll see if he watches the podcast this week because there's definitely some advice in here that maybe he should listen to and prevent himself from finishing last place. I believe the punishment was a Hot Wings challenge, if I'm correct.
It's something we'll at least discuss during the off season. That's kind of what I'm leading to. If they're one of those, like say, who just cannot handle spice, I might think of something different. Maybe just add some salt into it instead of spicy sauce. Maybe that'll be spicy enough for them, but we'll see.
Right on, right on. All right. Well, any final comments before we close out of the playoff preview episode?
This has been a fantastic year. Every single year, especially the last few years, it seems like it's You mean you have the one person who's always ahead of the group, but after that, it's a slugfest. And this year is no different. And unfortunately, once again, like last year, I'm right smack in the middle of it.
Yeah,
At least for
really,
my
everyone
team.
getting down, rolling in the mud this year. A lot of teams that just hanging on. 7-5 is the fourth place team. Only 2 win difference versus eighth is just says a lot about our league and just like how competitive everyone is and how everyone wants to win.
Yep.
All right, well that does it for this week's episode of the Fall Start Fantasy Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you all in the future. Likely be doing a post championship episode. We'll be talking about that later, but thank you so much for listening. We'll see you before the ball is snapped.